Polypede Works here, coming to you once again with chapter 1142 of One Piece, entitled The Things I Find Scary, in which we open to the 28th volume of the Yamato cover story, in which he is smacking Who's Who in the face with Thunder Bagua, saying, "Give me back Yasue's sword and the girls." This is funny that she's stepping into action here, because if you didn't know, Yamato is actually 28. So it's funny that she's stepping into action in the 28th volume of the cover story. I find that very cool. I do still think this will end with her sitting atop Who's Who, much like how Odin sat atop Ashura Doji after he defeated him. But we'll see. But moving on with the chapter, we have Jormungandr, a giant snake, attacking the Walrus School. If you didn't know, in Norse mythology, Jormungandr is the world serpent. So that's cool that we're seeing him here. However, what comes up a little later is that this may be a real creature. But continuing, we get some of the teachers here as they spring into action to protect the students. We have the mathematics teacher, Mr. Breed, whom by the looks of him, based on the horns that he has, seems to be someone with ancient giant's blood. We have another introduction to Miss Ange, who is actually the language arts teacher on top of being a librarian. And then we have the Walrus School principal, Mr. Kiba. Now, I made a video a little while ago called New Race, in which I talk about what Dosundatas could be. I suggested that Dosundatas could be people of multiple races whom have animal traits in them without necessarily being a mink. With that being said, he reminded me of another character that we've seen a little while ago, a very minor character. He was a pirate who used to be a part of the Whitebeard pirates that participated in the War of the Best during Marineford. His name is Isleswan, and Isleswan is a guy, presumably a human, that looks like a walrus. So maybe he too, much like Mr. Kiba here, is a Dosundata, if the theory holds true in the future. But continuing, the teachers defend the students against this giant snake, and we actually get to see that, yeah, Jaguar D. Saul can use haki, which makes a lot of sense because he was formerly a vice admiral, and those of that class are ones to have haki. So yeah, he uses armored haki, and he uses a very garb-like stance in which he performs an attack called Final Exorcisation, which is a combination of exorcism and final exam. And I find that very funny because he is a teacher of sorts. He's associated with a school, so the pun makes a lot of sense. And yeah, Mr. Breed, the mathematics teacher, is this is actually Mr. Kiba. Mr. Kiba is a hammer user, and he smacks Jormungandr before Saul delivers the final blow. So that's cool. And we find out too that Mr. Kiba was a former giant warrior pirate. From the age of him, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say he was on the first generation crew of the new giant warrior pirates with Fallbeard and Mountbeard, because they too were former captains before Brocky and Dory. So yeah, he was probably a part of that crew, if I had to guess. But yeah, he is a hammer user, and that's cool. And the kids didn't know that he was a warrior, so that's cool. That's cool. He's got the helmet and everything. He's suited up pretty quickly, and he's got a little belt that kind of reminds me of Onigashima, but I don't think that's important. Moving on, though, we find out that the PE teacher, Mr. Wolf, has been critically injured by something, and apparently the children just kind of walked away from his visage. And that's when a little kid asks Robin, whom is hiding in Saul's beard along with Chopper, he asks her, "You're friends with that Luffy guy, right?" And then he backs away from her. And she asks, "Did he do something to you?" I think this is the reaction to when Luffy attacked Colon, and now he just finds Luffy scary. Maybe that's what the joke is. I'm not sure. But yeah, Saul runs off to see where the children went, and that's when a little girl called Yelville, it's Ylva, I can't pronounce it. But yeah, she points out that, yeah, the children are down by the beach and they're sleepwalking. That's when we see a gaggle of giant children sleepwalking being led by an arrow, most likely the doing of Gonko and her arrow fruit. And I have to say, what is the arrow fruit? Because I assume it's a special paramecia. And I've done a video on that in the past saying that there are more special paramecias besides Katakuri, because she gives me the same type of vibe that Doflamingo's string fruit does, and what, of course, Katakuri's mochi fruit could do, but more so Doflamingo's fruit, because Doflamingo could do a whole bunch of different things. He could puppeteer people with Parasite. He could make a clone of himself with Black Knight. And then, of course, a lot of the people in that video on that list have this weird ability to make armor. And Gonko has made an armor before. Well, parts of an armor. She's made gauntlets and she's made boots. So that's interesting. And now the arrow fruit, in its very symbolic nature, can apparently guide sleepwalking people. I don't think the sleepwalking is the effect of Gonko. I think it's the effect of actually killing Ham, but we'll get to that in a second. That's when the country is alerted and more giant monsters appear, apparently. And then more children fall asleep, which then leads us back to the underworld, in which Loki is up, and Loki is huge. As I thought, Loki is several feet taller than his older brother Hadrian. A very Mario and Luigi type of situation going on. And that's when he says, Loki, I mean, if you care about keeping Elbaf safe, remove the last shackle. Rest assured, even in my current state, I'm far from helpless. And before that, he laughs at the idea that Sea Stone shackle would sap his strength that much. Which, I mean, based on how big he is and how dangerous he seems to be, yeah, it wouldn't. But his Dofu powers are turned off. That's when Luffy and Sanji react to him like, what is his deal? And Loki retorts and says, I'd hurry if I were you. If I strike the flames of rage, you know about Elbaf's greatest weakness, right? And we learned that in the previous chapter, or I believe a few chapters ago, that Elbaf's main weaknesses are fire and lightning. We then are greeted to a miraculous panel of Loki striking the tree. The hit is so big that can be seen offshore from Elbaf. That is immense. And I'm not sure, but seeing as how the strike is going into the clouds, I think the atmospheric pressure of the strike causes a chain reaction, which then makes a thunderbolt come down onto Elbaf, which does start a fire. That's crazy. What is that? I don't think that's a Dofu power either. I think that's just pure strength. That's crazy. Oh my goodness. Well, no, yeah, that can't be a Dofu power because he's shackled up with Sea Stone. So yeah, that's just hockey and strength. Goodness gracious. Yeah, and then that's when we hear, was that lightning? Elder Jarl, a fire has broken out in the south. I heard the horn blare too. This is bad, put it out. So yeah, no, the blaze is most likely from Loki hitting the tree. That's crazy. But in truth, that was just probably Loki's way to alert the mass of Elbaf that the children were being taken and that the Holy Knights were here and up to nefarious deeds. That's what I think, because obviously Loki is not a bad guy. But to continue, that's when, back at the Walrus School, we find out that the nature of these monsters possibly come from the dreams or nightmares, rather, of the children of the War School, because earlier that day, Miss Ange was having a bit of a, I guess, writing exercise and asked the children to draw what they were most afraid of. And someone drew Nika, and then the rest of the children talk about the things that they find scary. Someone finds Loki scary. Someone finds a Draugr scary, which if you are a fan of the Elder Scrolls Skyrim, a Draugr is a type of zombie. Someone finds a storm scary. Someone finds Nohengander scary, which is a Norse mythological dragon. And then someone finds Jormungandr scary. And Jormungandr was the giant snake that we saw earlier. Another thing to point out is that it's amazing how many children have horns, because we have the black horn girl from earlier and then another kid with horns. So that's cool. Oh, and also a little girl actually finds ghosts scary. So that's interesting. Yeah, and I just looked it up. A Draugr is an undead creature from Norse mythology that is said to live in graves and guard treasure. So yeah, a Norse zombie. Just had to look that up. But yes, the kids are listing several things that they find scary. Someone finds their own mother scary, which is very funny. Oh yes, and forgot to mention, Fenrir is an actual thing here because one of the children says that they find Fenrir scary, and one of the great beasts that appear later on is a giant wolf. It does not have a sword in its head, which makes me think that Shamrock's sword Cerberus is probably our legitimate Fenrir reference. But yeah, we actually have another one in a way here in the form of this weird projection. So that's cool. And yeah, apparently all those creatures actually come to life. As we see the mythological black dragon, we see a bear, we see, I guess, a Draugr, this Norse warrior guy. We see a bird of some sort. That reminds me of the bird thing from Impel Down. The basilisk. We see a storm cloud that looks like Zeus. We see a ghost, like a regular ghost, what you would think of as a ghost. There's a kraken in the background from the looks of it. Kind of looks like that weird octopus kraken thing from the Hachi cover story, if I recall correctly. We see a skeleton, which actually may be a Draugr. We kind of see something that looks like Big Mom. I don't know if that was the giant's mother or not, but it looks like Big Mom. We see a black Nika with a beard. So that's interesting. Huh. Don't know about that. And then we see this weird ghost with a hat and horns. I don't know what the ghost is supposed to be. Either this white ghost up here or this ghost wearing the hat. I'm not sure. Yeah, this is their nightmare world. This is the nightmares of the children. That's when we cut to the Holy Knights gang and Killingham wakes up. So here's the thing about Killingham. I think the sleepwalking or the sudden drowsiness that several of the children have, and then this whole nightmare creation thing that we're seeing, I believe all those are constructs and causes caused by Killingham. Now, there is a power that a Quillen or a Kieran is said to have, which is called guilt or innocence detection and or morality detection. So maybe that is being warped into this weird nightmare manifestation ability and or this sleep causality that Killingham seems to have. This also reminds me of a filler fruit that we saw years ago. And I believe a seahorse had the fruit. And this is one of the few abilities that you saw in both the anime and video games. Not too many powers make that trip, but the seahorse's name was Noko. And Noko was from the video game One Piece Ocean's Dreams and its remake One Piece Dragon Dream. And it was also in the Ocean's Dream arc of the anime. Its ability was something called the Nemu no Mi, or I guess in English it would just be called the sleep fruit. And it was the ability to make anybody fall asleep. And then once the person has fallen asleep, they can trap people within a dream world while they sleep. Inside the dream world, the user can steal the person's memories to power up. The user can also manipulate the dream world using the stolen memories, as well as take control of someone in the dream world, which is also very similar to the Uta no Mi, which was the Sing Sing fruit held by Uta, and it had a very similar ability with Top Musica. So I think Killingham's ability, presumably seeing as how he has fallen asleep and then wakes up and says, all right, that should do it. And then someone says, yep, good work, Killingham. Killingham replies back to, I think this is Summer speaking, but he replies back, I'll let it up once those runs reach the ship. Do you think they'll be able to get them back? And we have Saint Summers laugh for the first time here, and it's gee ha ha ha, which is funny. And he says, to love is to inevitably hurt one another, which is a interesting take. But that's when he asks, ain't that right, Gunko? What scares you the most? And that's when Gunko says Nika scares her the most, which is an interesting thought, given that she uses arrows like Emu used arrows to attack Sabo and Cobra back in the day. So yeah, I don't know what to make out of that, but I do think the nightmare creation and the sleep is caused by Killingham, which is very funny because Killingham himself looks like he's wearing a big like sleep snot bubble over his head, and he too looks like Noko a little bit. He looks like the seahorse. That's why I brought him up. That's why I think maybe the seahorse in this case is more of importance than, say, Uta, because the seahorse looks like a dragon. A Kieran or a Quillen is very draconic in its visage, and Killingham is very draconic in his visage. So I think this idea could be a canonical version of Noko and then the Sleep Fruit or the Nemu Nemu no Mi. With that being said, we do have a break next week. So no One Piece next week, which is a shame, but we have been rocking and a rolling, and this is quite the place to leave off on. But with that being said, yes, I do think Killingham is causing all of this. I don't know exactly how, because the ability in this case would be very, very wide. It would explain his supposed narcolepsy though, and why he just leaves his fruit on all the time. In addition, this does remind me of the abilities of the brush fruit, because I remember Kanjiro's like final attack was this big fire entity, which was actually on fire despite, I guess, coming from something that is technically ink. So what could be going on here is something similar, seeing as how Killingham presumably is making these creatures out of the nightmares of these children. Perhaps these creatures too have different abilities based on the dreams of the children. Perhaps the storm that kind of looks like Zoots shoots real lightning. Don't know, but that's something to think about. With that being said, give me your thoughts and tell your friends about Polypede Works It!